Thank you so much.
Hey,
Hello,
how's it going,
Daniel.
Peter?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
No worries. I apologize if I look tired. I tried my best.
No, no problem at all. You look great.
Obviously, congratulations on the film. First of all, I always love going into films knowing as little as possible. So
Same.
when this kind of like took the turn it did, I was like, okay, I'm invested. I want to know what's going on. So like, how did this idea originate for you? Because like it was definitely a nice sort of twist on the romantic comedy, so to speak.
Yeah, I think, for me anyway, I mean, death is just something that it's always there in our lives,
Mm,
whether we want to acknowledge it or not. And it's always fascinated me since I was a small child. And, I've always had a pretty good dose of fear of death, my entire life. And so for me, it was always a fascinating subject to tackle. But at the same time, I don't want to beat anybody over the head with a theme.
mm,
And it's the same you'll see like with the whole death date thing. Again, that's just sort of like an anecdotal sort of part of the story.
mm,
And I think it falls in line to where if we lived in a world where you could find out your death date, it would be anecdotal.
mm.
Like, oh yeah, I just went to the place, I found it out, I have this much time. And so I really kind of wanted it to live in a world like that. And, I mean, I credit that inspiration to probably most, if not all of, like Charlie Kaufman's films, where it's really story and character driven.
Mm.
And the fantastical part of it really should and does fall into the background, so that the audience can focus on the story and the characters and not sort of be sidetracked by all of this, glitzy sci-fi kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, I like that it was like we just live in a world where that technology happens. Like I like when there's not really a lot of exposition. Like it's like treating the audience with respect, being like, this is the world we're in. We don't really need to give you all of the science behind it. And with that, like if would you want to know your would you want to know your death date just to like to see how life would play out, or do you want to be like, I want to be surprised?
It depends. It depends on like if like for Mort, he needed to get a mortgage, So if
Yeah.
if there was something I really needed,
Mm.
and some reason I had to, I mean, I guess sure, why not? But at the same time, no,
Yeah.
no. I think I think I'm okay with the surprise, but at the same time, who knows? I mean, we're becoming like a species of like over planning, and we want to know
Mm.
everything. So I actually think the majority of people would probably want to know. And
Yeah.
then, and then people would figure out ways to monetize on it, like Tilda and Till Death Do Us Part, the dating service.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like, because I feel like, we're in a time when everything is it's so immediate. Like, we're seeing like people in cinemas like reacting to things immediately, filming in cinemas. Like there's like this attention span that's like seems to be shorter and everything's got to go 30 seconds on TikTok. Like I agree that we'd probably see the amount of people would be like, I want to know when I want to die when I'm dying, so that way I can live my life to the fullest, even though that kind of takes out the fun of what life
Mhm.
is because you should make your own choices organically. And I believe with you, like you started acting at a younger age. Like was filmmaking always something that interested you, or was that a path that kind of formed on its own the more that you were involved with productions?
It's people ask like, when did you know you wanted to become a filmmaker?
Mm,
I actually kind of always knew. I don't remember a time when I didn't know. I was 5 years old, and I enjoyed performing. I enjoyed music. I enjoyed all this stuff, and I'd ask my mom to like help me find someone to help me with that, to teach me.
mm,
And so she found me an acting teacher, and then when I was 10 years old, we got a camcorder, and I started making movies, and I got a bunch of old VCRs and a bunch of old TVs, and I would edit from like VHS to VHS in my room. And so I always knew that was what I want to do. The only thing that sort of I'm an artist overall, and that's what I've sort of figured out, and that's what I've sort of given myself permission to be, rather than have to classify: am I a DJ? Am I a music producer? Am I a movie producer, or this or that? I'm an artist, and I try and express myself in certain mediums at different times.
yeah. Hearing someone actually talk about VHS and know what a VHS is, it
Yeah.
makes me very, very happy.
Good. Yeah.
Was there,
I didn't even think about that till you brought it up. So now we can both feel old.
yeah, but like, was there a, you know, in terms of directing, like, was there a film or like film you saw or a director that you watched that kind of made you just go, oh, like I definitely want to explore this area?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel it's funny. I kind of think of it as like in the music world, like when I do electronic music, and
Mm.
sort of think of like being an artist or a filmmaker as a remixer, and that's what we're doing. We're remixing artistic ideas that inspired us from other artists. And
Yeah.
so, to me, in a sense, more to me is my own, but it's also a remix of a lot of things I've seen my entire life. And I for this film in particular, and for my first one, I really wanted to do an homage to like the left of center films that I loved growing up. And, one that I don't think I mentioned before, the Man with Two Brains with Steve Martin. I saw that movie when I was way too young to be seeing that movie. In fact, I think it might be the
Yep.
first movie I saw breasts in, actually. But also, films like After Hours, Martin Scorsese's After Hours from the 80s, Punch Drunk Love, Paul Thomas Anderson, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Like all of those were really what inspired me for this type of film.
Yeah. And obviously with this, like, casting is always key, and like the ensemble here, like when everyone was popping up, I was like, oh, like, you know, you haven't exactly, you know, skimped on like people that we know. Like, was there any performers here that you had always envisioned, or was there any actor that kind of like surprised you with how they took on the character when you were casting?
Yeah, I think, I mean, everybody surprised me in their own unique ways.
Mm.
For me, as a director or an artistic collaborator, I try not to have expectations, and it can be hard.
Yeah.
And I try and be as open as possible, because if I'm going to sit here and say only this actor can play the lead in my movie, you're going to
Mm.
be miserable, because if you don't get that actor, and there's a good likelihood the one you want you're not going to get,
Yeah.
then you're always going to be comparing it and whatever. So I try and leave as much leeway or as much openness for when we find the right person, or to be open to the right person when they come to you. And if I have this certain person or this certain character in my head, and I'm not allowing myself to be open, you're going to miss out on a lot of really great people.
Mm.
And so as a director, for me, it's really also about being able, and as a writer, to be able to like full heartedly give something you created over to them. It's not mine anymore, it's theirs. And
Yeah.
let them do, and unless it's like dramatically not in sync with the theme and the tone of the film, it's my job as a director to just shut up and like let them experience and have fun with the character, and let them find it. And if they need help finding it, I'm always here to support them. But
Mm.
largely, and that's also why I was very particular, and wanted to go the route I did to make my first film, because I could, I probably could have made this, years ago, or, on a very shoestring budget, which it
Mm.
was a pretty small budget anyway. But it's important to me to do it with the right people, to have the ability to have the right cast, the right crew, because as a director, that takes everything off my shoulders.
Mm.
Once we have, this cast, every time we got somebody, a new addition to the cast, it was just like a weight lifted. Like, okay, I don't have to worry about, like, they are a pro, they know what they're doing, they're a great creative artist. Here's the character now, and then it's, the only job I had was making sure everything, all the characters separately, were all in line and in sync together. And that's really
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. No, because one of the things I love was like with Jim Gaffigan's character, like a lot of his stuff kind of, I don't know, was there like a lot of improv with that sort of stuff? Because like I felt like he was just that sometimes he was just like, I'm just gonna say what I like. It was and it came across like everything felt so organic, even though we're in quite a removed sort of reality. Like all the dialogue very much flowed, and when it did sound off the cuff, it sounded natural. Like, was it a case of, as you said, like you gave them the characters and the leeway? Was there any dialogue that they switched up, or like in Jim's case, did he improv a lot? Like, was that something that you experienced on set?
Yeah, it was kind of, there was both. I think, like Jim, I just want to pay a tremendous amount of respect to Jim, because he is one of the most dedicated actors I've ever not just worked with, but seen, as far as like asking questions and taking, as weird and as goofy and as off center as the character in the film is,
Mm,
full wholeheartedly, like really putting himself into it. And so, I think it's a little of both. I mean, what I like to do, I like to leave them, I like to let the actors experiment with whatever they feel that the character should be or say or where they're at. I'm not married to like the dialogue, but at the
mm,
same time, you need to have a structure. A script is really just the blueprint. But for guys like Jay Farrow, Jim Gaffigan,
mm.
Reese, these guys gave me so much amazing stuff that, I mean, if I put all of it in, it would be a 3.5 hour movie.
Yeah,
um but yeah, those guys, I mean, they did what was expected of them as the character, but then they
mm,
also brought everything they had to it as well. So
yeah.
there's a lot of me, there's a lot of Jim, and all of that stuff.
Yeah, no, like it was really really interesting to watch, and like one of the great things that I think Kia says it about death and how it's like before we were alive there was nothing, after we die there's like, it was just like a really beautiful kind of philosophy to look at, to like you look at this film and just go, okay, like it makes death not as terrifying as like when we actually think about like that we're not going to be here after a certain time. So it's always like a fun thing to watch a film and to make you just think. And as much as entertainment helps us escape, it also helps us sort of like think about a lot of stuff, and that's what this
Yeah.
film brought. So yeah, again, congratulations on, I mean,
Thank you.
first film. Making a film, I know, is like ridiculously hard to do, so the fact that it's out there in the world must be pretty great. So yeah, thank you again.
Thank you. No, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All right, well, enjoy the rest of your day there. I'm a day ahead of you, so you're
Get
gonna
some
have a
rest.
great
Yeah.
day. I'll give you that much.